This is Dr. M. Preeti, Assistant Professor Physics in Hindustan College of Engineering and Technology. My topic is Nanomaterials. Nanomaterials deals with average grain size less than 100 nanometers. Outline of my presentation deals with introduction about nanoscience and technology, nanometer scale, nanomaterial, classification of nanomaterials based on origin, based on structural composition, based on the dimension, based on pore size and summary. Nanoscience and technology. The simplest definition of nanotechnology is technology at the nanoscale. Nanotechnology is the engineering and fabrication of objects with features smaller than 100 nanometer or 1/10 of the micron. Nanotechnology mainly consists of the processing of separation, consolidation, and deformation of materials by one atom or one molecule. It is ability to convert the nanomaterials to potential application by observing, measuring, manipulating, assembling, controlling, and manufacturing matter at the nanoscale. Nanometer scale. The nanometer is often used to express dimension on an atomic scale. The diameter of a helium atom is 0.06 nanometer and the ribosome is 20 nanometer. The nanometer is used to specify the wavelength of electromagnetic radiation near the visible part of the spectrum. Here the visible light ranges from around 400 to 700 nanometers. Nanomaterials. Materials with particle size of less than 100 nanometer in at least one of its dimension. The nanomaterials that have same composition as known as materials in bulk form may have different physicochemical properties. Material reduced to nanoscale can suddenly show very different properties compared to what they show on the microscale. For example, opaque substance become transparent in copper. Classification of nanomaterial. Classification of nanomaterial based on structural configuration, based on number of dimension, based on pore size, based on origin. Based on origin. Natural nanomaterials. Natural nanomaterials can be found in variety of forms in nature. That means viruses, protein molecules, minerals like clay, natural colloids. Artificial nanomaterials. So carbon nanotubes and semiconductor particles like quantum dots are examples of artificial nanomaterials that are made continuously using precise mechanical and manufacturing procedure. Based on structural composition, organic compounds. Organic compounds are converted into organic nanomaterial. The example of organic nanomaterial is liposomes. Inorganic nanomaterial are composed of metal-based or metal oxide-based nanomaterials. Metal oxide nanomaterial. Metal oxide nanomaterial is composed of positive metallic ions and negative oxygen ions. Carbon-based nanomaterials. Carbon-based nanomaterials are composed of carbon, include five main materials, namely carbon nanotubes, graphene, fluorescence, carbon nanofiber, and black carbon. Based on the dimension, zero-dimensional nanomaterials. These nanomaterials have all three dimensions within the nanoscale range. The example of zero-dimensional nanomaterial is quantum dot fluorescence. One-dimensional nanomaterials. Nanomaterials in this case have two of the three dimensions in the nanoscale range, but one dimension of the nanostructure is outside the non-metric range, such as nanofibers and nanotubes. Two-dimensional nanomaterials. It have plate-like shapes with two-dimensional outside the nanometer range, but one-dimensional is at nanoscale range. Example of two-dimensional nanometer is thin film multilayers. Three-dimensional nanomaterials. Nanomaterials that are confined to the nanoscale in any dimension or dimension range. Based on the pore size. Microporous material. These materials have pores with diameter size of 0.2 to 2 nanometer. Mesoporous materials. These materials have pores with diameter size of 2 to 50 nanometer. Macroporous materials. These materials have pores with diameter size of 50 to 1000 nanometers. Summary. Materials with a particle size of less than 100 nanometer in at least one of the dimension. Nanoparticles can be divided into four categories: depending on their origin, structural composition, dimension and pore size. Based on the origin, natural and artificial nanomaterials. Based on the structural composition, organic, inorganic, metal oxide and carbon nanomaterials. Based on structural dimension, 0D, 1D, 2D and 3D nanomaterials. Based on structural pore size, microporous, mesoporous and macroporous nanomaterials. Thank you.